So here it is. We're finally doing it. We are finally doing it, my friends. This is the MSI GS66 Stealth, one of the most requested reviews that we received alongside the Dell G15 Special Edition, which is also in the works, so definitely stay tuned for that. Now, why did it take so long for you to publish this review, Eber? I'm sure that's a question that a lot of you have in mind. Basically, in early May, right before we were about to publish this video or this review, MSI sent revisions to both the embedded controller and the BIOS that updated both that was being shipped inside retail units. So this new update supposedly optimized fan speeds, which then lowered temperatures, which also allowed the notebook to hit high frequencies without impacting fan noise. So if we posted this video in like late April or early May, it wouldn't really show the true performance, especially if you're picking up this laptop. It wouldn't really show its true potential. So we took the time to properly evaluate what this notebook is capable of. So let's get started right after this.
The Be Quiet Pure Base 500 is a perfectly sized, handsome mid-tower with the usual silent properties on the front panel and foam on the interior, with 2 quality fans included, plus a modular top section to expand the cooling potential. Give you hardware in your home with the Pure Base 500.
Okay, so let's get pricing out of the way. The GS66 Stealth starts at $1,600, and for that, you get a 10th Gen Core i7 10750H processor with 6 cores and 12 threads, 16 gigabytes of RAM, 512 gigs of storage, and an RTX 2060. The sample that we have over here comes with that same CPU, twice the memory, the same amount of storage, and an RTX 2070 Super Max-Q GPU. Oh, and the upgraded 300Hz display over the 240Hz on the base model. And the price? $2,300 US. Now, naturally, you can go balls to the wall and spec this thing out with Intel's fastest 8-core 16-thread processor, a terabyte of storage, and an RTX 2080 Super Max-Q. Just be comfortable paying $3,000. So where does the GS66 Stealth align with the competition? Well, there's the Razer Blade 15 Advanced model, the Gigabyte Aero 15, the Asus ROG Zephyrus S15. I really want to get my hands on that model. And pricing for all of these notebooks are pretty much the same when you compare spec to spec. So with that out of the way, let's talk about exterior impressions. I'm genuinely impressed with the build quality and design of this laptop. The Stealth branding certainly fits the product design. The chassis is crafted from CNC aluminum for the most part, not entirely like the unibody design found on the Blade 15. I love the laser-etched logo on the lid, gives it a nice sleek look. I'm sure Batman would rock this as his daily driver. The hinge is pretty solid. One of the unique things about this notebook is that you can lay the screen 180 degrees flat, just like that. Now, I don't know if this is something that you do often, but it is a feature. Now, MSI does say that they're using metal rivet materials inside the hinge to make it smooth. There is less wobble, which is nice, so you shouldn't be worried about it when you're typing or using this thing on your lap. One thing that really bothered me the most was the plastic rail at the front. To give you a little bit of context, we treat every notebook that enters the studio carefully. But on our sample, the plastic railing on the edge chipped. Now, this unit could have shipped out of the factory in this condition, or it could have occurred during shipping, but I personally think that MSI's choice of implementing this plastic rail at the front just doesn't fall in line with the premium notebook mantra that they're trying to go for with the GS66 Stealth. It just sticks out like a sore thumb. And if you type a lot or spend hours gaming, the transition from the palm rest to this plastic isn't that smooth. It just feels like 2 pieces were glued together. This might not be a huge deal breaker for a lot of people, but some people do care, and I thought that it was worth mentioning. Now, the palm rest does pick up fingerprints, but I guess it's expected because a lot of these notebooks that come with an anodized black finish they are prone to fingerprints, so it's something to keep in mind. I mean, the Blade 15 is a great example of picking up fingerprints, so this is just right up its alley. The interior space is pretty clean with a fairly good keyboard layout. Personally, I'm not a fan of the font choice. I wish they went with something low profile. There are a few things that I need to point out. The function and control buttons are really close to each other, so you might hit one or the other by accident. Also, for some reason, there are 2 backsplash keys on this keyboard. I don't really get it. I mean, why would someone need 2 of them? Obviously, there's one below the backspace key, which is a standard way of putting things. And then there's another one beside the function and control button. I didn't notice it at first. Mike had to tell me that, oh yeah, there's another backsplash key. Just so you know. The keys themselves are pretty good. MSI has always had a close partnership with SteelSeries to deliver a solid typing and gaming experience. It feels roughly the same as my Blade 15, albeit there's just a little bit more travel distance on the GS66, which should complement typists. Unfortunately, RGB lighting is not that great. It doesn't get bright, especially when you compare it to the Blade. That laptop is the gold standard for keyboard backlighting in my opinion. Also, there's no visual indication when you're adjusting the brightness levels. They do go up in 5-step intervals, but you have to guess every single time when you're adjusting it to your preference. It was really frustrating for me. The trackpad is awesome. It is a glass surface, which makes navigating through Windows a breeze. I love having the smooth surface also paired with a high refresh rate display. It's just a perfect combination, and it's something that you have to experience in person. The integrated primary left and right buttons, they feel solid and tactile. Nothing to complain here. So this is the webcam test on the GS66 Stealth. Now I'm going to shut myself for a sec so you can listen to, that. I feel like they've placed a microphone in between the fans. Now keep in mind that I have placed this laptop in the silent profile, which means the fan speeds should be spinning at a lower rate, but that's not the case. So yeah, if you plan on using this for business meetings, just get yourself a proper microphone because this is totally unusable. Like, how did this pass quality control? Like MSI, what are you doing? The built-in speakers sound pretty bad. They're technically bottom-facing, but MSI has redirected the sound through this thin cutout on the palm rest. So when you're listening to something, the sound resonates to the chassis and then it escapes through these thin grills. And let me tell you, they sound way too harsh, especially with the trebles. There's absolutely no bass, so there's no depth to the sound that you're listening to. In fact, the Tough A15 from ASUS that I checked out last week sounded way, way better than this. Moving on to ports. On the left-hand side, you have power in, Thunderbolt 3 with support for PD charging up to 65 watts and a DisplayPort 1.4 pass-through, HDMI 2.0, and a Type-A USB 3.2 Gen 2 port. Switching to the right, you get a LAN jack, 2 more Type-A 3.2 Gen 2 ports, a Type-C port, and an audio jack. So it's a good selection. Unfortunately, there is no full-size SD card reader, so if you're a content creator, that might be a bit of an issue. That's because when you look at the competition, especially from Gigabyte, the Aero 15, that has a full-size SD card slot. The Razer Blade 15 Advanced model just got it. Heck, the new Dell XPS 15 comes with a full-size SD card slot. So I think you really need to prioritize what you need and what you use and then make the purchasing decision. Now, just be aware that if you have stuff plugged into the right-hand side and if you use an external mouse, you might constantly start bumping into those cables, especially with that LAN port right over there. So I want to wish you the very best if you use that LAN port because, just be prepared to bump. Switching gears to the display, it's a 15.6-inch 1080p panel with a refresh rate of 300 Hz, and it's IPS level, though it isn't G-Sync compatible. It's very color accurate. As you can see, it covers 100% sRGB, 76% Adobe RGB, and 78% DCI-P3. So it's very close to my Blade 15. So if you're a content creator or photographer, or if you value color accuracy, this will not disappoint you. The viewing angles are nice. There's good contrast. I just wish that the screen was a bit more brighter because it only gets as bright as 330 nits. I think this is something that we're going to start to see common among high refresh rate displays. They just won't get brighter. But I hope that changes sometime soon. Speaking of high refresh rates, this is my first 300 Hz display, and coming from my Blade 15 featuring a 240 Hz screen, I genuinely can't see the difference. I feel like the 300 Hz term is just marketing fluff to generate more sales, but realistically, if you are looking for a gaming laptop, yes, you should look for a high refresh rate screen, but I don't think you absolutely need a 300 Hz panel. I think you'll be completely fine with a 144 Hz, maybe even a 240 Hz display if you can pick it up at a lower price point. That would be the best bang for the buck type of option. And also, let's just get real for a sec. Most visually demanding titles or games that look really nice can't really hit 300 frames per second because of the current hardware situation. And there are also other frame caps for certain games as well. So these are certainly some things to take into account when you're shopping around for a gaming laptop. Under the hood, you have instant access to 2 RAM slots, which are preoccupied. Maximum supported memory is 64 gigabytes. The main 512 gig NVMe SSD is right over here, and there's an extra M.2 slot for expansion, which is nice. It's something that the Blade 15 Advanced lacks. The drive speeds are insanely fast. This is one of the fastest drives we've encountered, with read speeds approaching 3.5 gigabytes per second. The writes are a bit on the lower side, but it's still wicked fast, guys. Now, MSI has been bragging about having the world's highest capacity battery in a laptop. In this case, it's 99.9 watt hours, which is the legal limit obviously, so naturally you'd expect good results. Well, that's not the case because there's a lot of background applications running behind the scenes. For example, we have MSI TrueColor, which is the one taking care of the display. Then there's the SteelSeries Engine 3 software that takes care of the keyboard. Then we have the Killer LAN networking software for the Wi-Fi card. And then finally, we have MSI Dragon Center, which is obviously the performance control option that lets you switch between profiles and takes care of all that stuff. All these applications, when you add them together, it consumes about 3 to 5% of the CPU usage plus associated memory usage as well. So that definitely impacts battery life. So as you can see on our light load test, refreshing a Chrome web page on a loop, it only lasted for about 8 hours, which is good, but it's nowhere near the tough A15 that I checked out last week, featuring a power-efficient AMD CPU. The tables have really turned this time, guys. The same story goes with our heavy load test. Don't expect too much out of this thing. Okay, so now let's get into performance. To be honest with you, don't expect too much out of this new 6-core 12-threaded processor. The Core i7-10750H offers a respectable improvement over the 9750H, but when you compare it to what AMD offers with the Ryzen 7 4800H, it's a joke. I really think you need to evaluate what your needs are. For example, if you compile a lot of code or used rendering-based applications like Blender, you should really look into AMD offerings. They're much faster and should save you a lot of time. Now, before we get into the results, let's take a look at how the CPU and GPU behaves over time under heavy load. Starting things with Autodesk Maya, which is CPU intensive, temperatures shoot up all the way up to 95°C. They stay there for a little bit and then slowly round off to about 90°C, which is very hot for an all-core load, guys. It actually stays that way for the rest of the test. All-core frequency started 3.8 GHz, but it was only a matter of time for it to throttle between 3.4 and 3.5 GHz. This is actually pretty respectable clock speed, so it looks like MSI is sacrificing temperatures for performance in this case. During gaming, the CPU temps averaged higher than we expected, but that also made sense because the heat produced by high loads on both the CPU and GPU eventually add up. The clock speeds boosted higher too since the processor wasn't stressed at 100%. We're talking 3.6 or 3.8 GHz, and there were a few instances where it boosted to 4.1 GHz, but that didn't really help with performance. The 2070 Super Max Q ran pretty cool, actually noticeably cooler than the CPU, averaging around 70 degrees Celsius. But we also can't forget, NVIDIA's boost algorithms require pretty low temperatures to be completely effective. The clock speeds start pretty high at 1800 MHz, but it fell off the cliff to about 1450 MHz, which is quite a bit above the official frequencies that NVIDIA claims. Now on to the rest of the results. If you use Adobe Premiere to edit videos, this notebook shouldn't disappoint you. With the new update, optimizations have improved by a huge margin, leveraging the CPU, the iGPU, and the discrete graphics card in parallel. However, there's little to no reason to upgrade from the 9750H. That CPU is still pretty strong, guys. You're not gaining a lot in that area. Resolve ran pretty fast on this machine. Do note that this is GPU focused, so the 2070 Super plus the relatively higher clock speeds on the CPU comes in clutch, but that tough A15 is not too far behind. When it comes to video transcoding, like I said earlier, AMD is your best option if you use Handbrake, for instance. And wrapping things up with our WinRAR test, that fast NVMe SSD helps a lot to speed up with compression. Finally, gaming performance was really good. The RTX 2070 Super can match an RTX 2080 non-Super in frame rates for the most part. You can comfortably play at 1080p set to the high settings, but none of these games were able to leverage that 300Hz display. Surface temperatures were pretty hot, especially in the WASD zone, and the exhaust on the right side blows out hot air like someone's blasting a heater at your hand. It's good for winter, but during summer, especially when you're using a mouse, just be prepared to embrace sweaty hands. I wouldn't also leave this on my lap for longer sessions. Fan noise is pretty bad on the GS66. It just gets excessively loud during heavy gaming load scenarios, so do keep note of that. Even during silent mode, the fans still keep ramping up, and you clearly saw that by the webcam test. But I'm also gonna roll this clip right over here because on my sample, I was able to notice coil whine as well, so yeah, that's just unfortunate. Just take a listen. All right, conclusion time. I have mixed feelings about the GS66 Stealth. I will give credit to MSI for delivering a sleek and stealthy design, but there are some things that I just wished that were just perfect. Or in other words, I just wished if MSI was able to connect the dots between some elements seamlessly. Eber, what does that even mean? I mean, what are you even talking about? Well, that plastic rail on the edge, I just can't see myself getting over it. I really wished if it was a unibody design. The keyboard backlighting, not the greatest, especially when compared to the competition. The speakers sound terrible, the microphone quality is trash. Like, how did this pass quality control? I just don't get it. Also, this laptop is excessively loud during gaming scenarios, so those are certainly some factors to consider. Now, the performance is solid for the size, but in my opinion, I feel like there are better options out there, especially, if you're looking for a faster CPU. AMD is definitely killing it lately. Now, you are getting a better display. It is nice, but do you need a 300 Hertz panel for gaming? Not really, guys. I think you'll be perfectly fine with a 240 Hz display or even a 144 Hz display. That will save you a lot of money, in my opinion. See, the GS66 Stealth check marks what a gaming laptop should be. It offers great performance, but when you look at the rest of the picture, there's just a lot that leaves to be desired. So on that note, thank you so much for watching. I hope I was able to answer some of the questions that you guys had about this laptop, and let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm signing off. Stay safe, spend responsibly, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.